When you're ready to start withdrawing money from your RRSP in retirement, you'll need to convert it to a RRIF, a retirement income fund. Now, over the last 2 decades as a financial planner, I've seen people fall into a very costly trap with the RRSP to RRIF conversion, leading some retirees to pay hundreds of thousands in unnecessary taxes. And so, in this video, I want to break down what this conversion trap is, and then I'll go through an example using our financial planning software to show you just how costly this mistake can be and what you can do to avoid it. So for anyone that's unaware, your RRSP needs to convert to an RRIF, a retirement income fund, when you want to start drawing money out of the RRSP. And you have to do this by the age you turn 71. So in the year you turn 71, if you still have an RRSP, you need to make sure you set up a RRIF, convert your RRSP or move your RRSP over to the RRIF, and you have to start taking money out of that RRIF the year you turn 72. Now, just to be clear, your RRSP to your RRIF isn't sell everything in your RRSP, move it to a RRIF. It stays the same. Think of it, your RRSP and your RRIF, as just the umbrella over the investment. So you're just changing the umbrella. So if you own, ABC Corp within your RRSP, you don't sell it, you don't do anything with it, it just moves over to your RRIF. And again, whichever financial institution you work with, just contact them, have them set up a RRIF, and have them move your RRSP to a RRIF. It's not a taxable event. It won't trigger any sales. It's a very simple process. So if you're turning 71 here in 2025 and you're still sitting on your RRSP, just be prepared. Your financial institution, if you don't reach out to them, they will contact you and say that you need to set up a RRIF. This is why you're turning 71 next year in 2026. You're going to be forced to take out some money, and I'll cover that here shortly. Now, once you've converted your RRSP to a RRIF, there is a minimum requirement that you have to take out every year. As an example, if you're 65, the minimum amount is 4% of the account value at the end of the previous year. So that's how the calculation goes. So again, it's a percentage based on your age, and that percentage is multiplied times the account value on December 31st, the year prior. So you can do a quick calculation to figure out what is the minimum amount I need to take out of my RRIF account next year, once the year turns over. So again, a percentage times the account value at the end of the year. Anytime you pull money out of a RRIF, so whether it's that minimum amount that you calculated, anything above the minimum amount, or maybe you pull money out of your RRSP, any 3 of those options are considered taxable income to you. So just because you're required to take money out of that RRIF, don't think that it's tax-free money or your money just coming back to you. That is fully taxable income because you got a tax break when you originally put the money in. Remember back in the day when you put in that $5,000 or $10,000 or more, right? It saved you taxes at that time. That money's grown tax deferred to this point, and now you're going to start pulling it out once it's converted to a RRIF. So where does this RRSP to RRIF trap come into play? Well, it comes into play in the fact that once you convert your RRSP to a RRIF, which you can do at any time, you just have to do it by age 71, for many of you, you avoid doing it because once you convert your RRSP to a RRIF, there's that minimum amount that you have to take out. It's taxable income, and a lot of you are trying to avoid taxes, so you try to avoid income. And I'm going to show you in the software here in a minute why that's probably not the best plan, like for 99% of you, and things you should do to avoid this trap. For many of you, as you enter into retirement, you're living off some cash savings, maybe a bit of your TFSA, your non-registered account. You're not driving up taxable income. In fact, I talk to a lot of you on a daily and weekly basis that say, you know what, Adam, I've been retired for 2 years and it's been fantastic. I haven't paid a single dime in tax. Then as we start working with them, we realize and we show them that, look, that's great, you pay no tax, but you bump that down the road and it's compounded. And you would have been better off paying a smaller amount of tax and leveling things out over time. Now, again, their thought process behind this is, let's just bump everything down the road. Take CPP earlier, guaranteed income, we'll bump the RSP down the road, convert it at 71 to a RRIF. And this is probably more than 50% of Canadians, probably more than 75% of Canadians. And I'm going to show you here in a second how a typical Canadian walks through retirement and how we would recommend you walk through retirement and the difference it can make. The second trap that many of you fall into is when you convert at age 71. So trap number 1 is you've waited till 71, which probably wasn't the best idea. And then when you do convert at 71, you only start taking the minimum amount out. You don't take more than the minimum. Now I get it, you want to take as little income as possible, but you're just shoving a problem down the road, and that problem compounds itself over time. So again, are you waiting to 71 to convert your RSP to RRIF? Trap number one. Trap number two is when you convert to a RRIF, are you only taking the minimum amount out, or are you doing some tax planning and actually taking a little bit more than the minimum amount? So here we have Mr. John YouTube, 65-year-old individual with $650,000 in an RSP, $125,000 in a TFSA, and he's taking his government benefits here at age 65. So he's hitting retirement, and again, his plan is what we just talked about, is to go back to, you know what, I'm going to take my CPP, my old age security, and live off my TFSA. It's tax-free income, and as you can see here, his effective tax rate is zero. Like his total tax is, you know, under $100 to under $200 every single year for the first 4 years of retirement. So you can see here, zero RSP drawdown. So let's use the TFSA, let's use government money, and then we'll draw down the minimum amount of the RSP. You can see there's a bit of money coming out at age 69, simply because he's run out of the tax-free savings account. So in this case, we've mapped him out at $50,000 a year. So this is how a lot of you are living retirement. And again, a scenario like this, we see all too often that, you know, you start your CPP, start your old age security, draw down tax-free income, whether it's a tax-free savings account or maybe some savings you have aside, emergency account, whatever it is, and you're doing everything you can to bump that RRIF down the road and that taxable income down the road. And that's what John YouTube's done in this first scenario. But what if he actually looked at some planning and actually looked at drawing down, converting his RSP to a RRIF at age 65 when he retired? So what does that look like? So here again, John YouTube, same amount of assets. Instead of taking CPP at 65, he bumped that to 70 to allow himself to draw down his RSP, take more than the minimum amount. He's converted to a RRIF account. He's drawn that out. First off, that account is depleted by age 83. So before life expectancy, you can see on the very right-hand side, tax on estate is zero. So that's great. That's obviously a good checkpoint for him. And that estate tax continues to be zero over time. Now, you can also see here the added benefit of this is the TFSA account does not get touched. It's a well-funded TFSA right through retirement. So because he converted his RSP to a RRIF and started drawing that down and creating some tax efficiency, guess what? He's created a lot more flexibility with his TFSA account. In fact, there's extra money in here, and it's put a little bit in that non-registered account the first few years. But again, we're not touching his TFSA account until age 83. If we go back to the other scenario, you can see because we're touching the TFSA early and quite aggressively, he's actually out of his TFSA halfway through the age of 69. And so at age 70, 75, 80, somewhere in there, if he had an emergency and he needed a bunch of cash, he doesn't have any tax-free cash. He'd have to deplete more of his RSP, drive up his tax bill, and it's very inefficient. And I've talked about this before, like having flexibility in your plan. So that's when we talk about like RSP to a RRIF early. Start taking your money out of your RRIF earlier. Take more than the maximum amount. You got to look at how that ties into your other accounts you have, into OAS, to CPP. If you have a pension, like you can have a lot of moving parts. Maybe you have a corporation you can draw from. Like there's many moving parts in retirement, and there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. So the first way John looked to do it was not a great way. First off, it drew down his TFSA very quickly. There was no flexibility there. It left an estate issue later on down the road. Whereas the second one, it drew down his RSP, created tax efficiency. It left his TFSA for him. And I'll show you a comparison here, apples to apples, so you can see the difference in how much his estate's worth, how much tax he's paying, all of it along the way. So here we have a direct comparison, and number one here is drawing down, having an actual plan. Number two is not. So you can see I've left it at $50,000, so the lifetime expenses or income is the exact same. But you can see lifetime government benefits at age 87. So life expectancy here, not till 95, but just life expectancy of 87 for John YouTube. We're looking at close to $100,000 of added benefits. So for a lot of you, you think, well, no, I'm going to take it earlier to get more. Well, if you live to life expectancy, it's actually not the case. And even if we drew this back, let's say to like 80, you can see like the numbers are different, still $24,000. So again, this is software that's great to look through. This is what you should be using something like this with your financial planner to look at like what makes the most sense for me, like my scenario, what's going to help me most. Now, the biggest thing here is at life expectancy, age 87, you can see this estate after tax. John will have $133,000 more in his pocket or in his estate's pocket when he passes away if he does some planning versus no planning. And the last thing I want to show you in this software here is what if John wanted to spend all his money by the time he dies? So die with 0, plans to 95, wants to make sure he has some left over into his 90s. So we plan to 95, but die with 0. Like he's got nothing left at that point. You can see the most amount of money he can draw is $50,908. This is with no planning. And here, John's scenario with planning, you can see again, die with 0, have nothing left at the end of the day. And he's got $52,381. So a substantially more, about $1,500 every year, adjusted to inflation, after tax in his pocket. And that's a very simple illustration of how small changes can make a big impact. Again, $133,000 more in an estate or $1,500 more after tax adjusted to inflation for the rest of his life. Like that's an extra 3%. We all are looking for extra money in our pocket, right? We pay so many taxes, life's getting expensive. Look, if you could not put more money in your pocket or more savings in your pocket, but just rejig stuff so you actually have $1,500 more every year in your pocket adjusted to inflation after tax, would you not do that? So again, that's why when you look at planning, when you look at RRSP to RRIF, the timing of it, for 99% of you, you want to be converting your RRSP to RRIF prior to 71. Sure, there's outliers where you might have a lot of non-registered money or a big corporate account or something that plays a factor. But for the majority of you watching this, as you retire, you want to talk to your financial planner about converting your RRSP to RRIF and start drawing money out, and not just the minimum, right? Trap number 1, waiting till 71. Trap number 2, only taking the minimum. If you need help with your retirement plan, you're not sure where to go, reach out to our office. You can learn more at parallelwealth.com/planning. We provide fee-for-service retirement planning. And the software I'm showing you here, this is exactly what our team does with our clients. We go through scenarios, make sure everything comes together. I always say, like, all of your assets and income sources need to work together, come down the funnel, and give you the most amount of money possible. And that's what our planning services do. So if you're looking for help with that, if you need help with your retirement planning, again, visit parallelwealth.com/planning, reach out to our office. We'd love to help you out with that. And for most of you in a really good retirement plan, your TFSA plays a huge factor. And if you want to learn more about how a TFSA should be built and maximized in your retirement plan, check out this video.